They laughed when the fat woman walked into the bunkhouse. They stopped laughing when she saved their lives. Montana, 1881. A woman's society rejected, a ranch full of men who despised her, and a winter so brutal it would kill them all unless she could do what no one believed possible. This is the story of Mara Holloway, the woman who refused to disappear. Stay until the end to see how one act of desperate courage changed everything. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wind came down from the mountains like something with teeth. Mara Holloway stood outside the general store in Timber Creek with her last $2 clutched in her wool glove, watching the merchant's wife pretend not to see her through the frosted window. She'd been standing there 11 minutes. She knew because she'd counted each one, the way you count things when you're trying not to think about how hungry you are. The door finally opened, not for her. For Thomas Greer and his new bride, both of them pink-cheeked and laughing about something. Thomas saw Mara and his smile went flat. His bride, couldn't have been more than 19, looked Mara up and down with the kind of expression you'd give a stray dog with mange. "Excuse us," Thomas said, though Mara wasn't blocking anything. She stepped aside anyway. She always did. Inside, the store smelled like coffee and flour and the peppermint sticks in the jar by the register. Mara headed straight for the counter, keeping her eyes down. Mrs. Pritchard was weighing out sugar for another customer, moving slow as winter molasses. "Be with you in a minute," Mrs. Pritchard said, not looking up. Mara waited. The other customer, a thin woman in a green dress, kept glancing at her sideways like Mara might be contagious. When Mrs. Pritchard finally finished, she turned to Mara with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What can I do for you?" "2 pounds of cornmeal," Mara said, "and a half pound of lard if there's enough left." Mrs. Pritchard's smile thinned. $2 won't cover all that. It covered it last week. Prices went up. Mrs. Pritchard crossed her arms. "Supply train's been delayed. Everything's scarce." Mara looked at the shelves behind the counter. They weren't empty. Not even close. "Then just the cornmeal," she said. Mrs. Pritchard sighed like Mara was asking her to move mountains, then measured out the cornmeal with theatrical slowness. When she dumped it in the cloth sack, half of it puffed up in a cloud. She tied the sack and slapped it on the counter. $2. Mara handed over the money and took the cornmeal. It felt light. Definitely not 2 pounds. But she didn't argue. There was no point. There never was. Outside, the wind hit her like a fist. January in Montana wasn't weather. It was warfare. The kind that killed people who weren't careful. Mara pulled her shawl tighter and started the long walk back to her cabin, 3 miles north of town. The cornmeal sack bumped against her hip with each step. She'd been beautiful once. That's what her mother used to say, back before the fever took her. "You were such a pretty baby, Mara. All that dark hair and those big eyes." But pretty babies don't always grow into pretty women, and Mara had grown into something else entirely. Something the women in town whispered about, and the men ignored or worse, didn't ignore in ways that made her skin crawl. By the time she was 16, she'd learned to make herself invisible. By 20, she'd perfected it. And now at 28, she was so good at disappearing that sometimes she wondered if she was even real anymore. The cabin came into view just as the sun started dropping behind the mountains. It wasn't much. 1 room, a stone fireplace, a narrow bed her father had built before he died. But it was hers. The only thing in the world that was. She got the fire going and mixed the cornmeal with water and a pinch of salt. It made a thin gruel that tasted like nothing, but it was hot and it would keep her alive another day. That was something. She ate slowly, making it last, then cleaned the pot and sat by the fire with her father's old Bible. She didn't read it for religion. She'd given up on that years ago. But because the margins were full of his handwriting, little notes and observations, reminders that someone had once thought about things besides surviving. The wind picked up outside, howling through the gaps in the walls. Mara added another log to the fire and wrapped herself in both blankets. It was going to be a long night. They were all long nights now. She was almost asleep when she heard the knocking. At first she thought it was just the wind, but then it came again. 3 solid thumps on the door. Mara sat up, heart hammering. Nobody came out here. Not in winter. Not ever. "Who's there?" she called. "Name's Porter. I got a message for Miss Mara Holloway." Mara got up and opened the door a crack. A man stood on her porch, bundled in a heavy coat, frost in his beard. He looked miserable. "You're Mara Holloway?" "I am." "I got a letter for you from Rhett Mercer." Mara blinked. "I don't know anyone named Rhett Mercer." "Well, he knows you." Porter pulled an envelope from inside his coat and handed it over. "Said it's urgent. I'll wait while you read it in case there's a reply." Mara took the envelope. It was thick paper, expensive. Her name was written across the front in neat, slanted handwriting. She opened it carefully. "Miss Holloway, I am writing to offer you employment as head cook at Iron Ridge Ranch. The position includes room and board, $40 per month, and a separate cabin for your private use. The work is demanding and the location remote, but if you are willing, I need someone immediately. I understand you can cook for large groups and are accustomed to harsh conditions. I also understand you are a woman of discretion and will not be deterred by rough company. If you accept, Mr. Porter will escort you to the ranch tomorrow morning. If you decline, I will understand and wish you well. Respectfully, Rhett Mercer." Mara read it twice, then looked up at Porter. "How does he know I can cook?" "Don't know, miss. I just deliver messages." "Where is this ranch?" "About 40 miles west. Up in the high country. It's a hard ride." $40 a month. That was more money than Mara had seen in 2 years. Enough to save. Enough to maybe, eventually, get somewhere else. Somewhere people didn't know her. But a ranch full of men, remote location, rough company. That could mean a lot of things, none of them good for a woman alone. "I need to think about it," Mara said. Porter shifted on his feet. "Mr. Mercer said to tell you he's got 12 men at that ranch, and they've been without a decent cook for 3 months. Said they're eating beans and hardtack and getting mean about it. He needs someone who won't run off when they get ugly." "They get ugly often?" "They're ranch hands, miss. They get ugly professional." Mara almost smiled. "Wait here." She went back inside and looked around the cabin. 1 room, 2 blankets, a sack of cornmeal that wouldn't last the week. And winter had another 3 months to go at least. She thought about Mrs. Pritchard's face, Thomas Greer's bride looking at her like she was dirt. All the years of making herself small and invisible, and it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. $40 a month, a cabin of her own. And if the men got ugly, well, men had been ugly to her for free her whole life. At least this way she'd get paid for it. She packed everything she owned in 10 minutes. It fit in 1 canvas bag. Porter looked surprised when she came back out. "You're taking the job?" "I'm taking the job." "You sure? It's rough country up there." Mara locked the cabin door and pocketed the key, even though there was nothing left inside worth stealing. Everything's rough country. They left before dawn. Porter had 2 horses, a gelding for himself and a sturdy mare for Mara. The mare was old but calm, which was good because Mara hadn't been on a horse in 5 years. She climbed up awkward and heavy, feeling Porter's eyes on her, waiting for him to say something. He didn't, just clicked his tongue and started riding. The trip took 2 days. They rode through country so empty it felt like the edge of the world. Mountains on all sides, snow-covered and sharp against the sky. At night they camped in the open, and Porter cooked salt pork over a small fire while Mara stayed wrapped in her blanket, trying not to freeze. "You ever worked on a ranch before?" Porter asked on the second night. "No." "Ever cooked for a big crew?" "I cooked for my father's logging camp when I was 16, 20 men, 3 meals a day, all summer." Porter nodded slowly. "That'll do. But I'll be straight with you, Miss Holloway. These men are going to be hard on you. I've met men before." "Not like these." Porter poked at the fire. "They're good workers, most of them. But they've been out there a long time with nobody but each other. They're bored and mean and looking for someone to take it out on. You're going to be that someone." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Mr. Mercer's a good man and he needs help. But I don't want you showing up and running off the first day. He can't afford that." Mara pulled the blanket tighter. "I won't run." "You say that now." "I say it because it's true." She looked across the fire at him. "You think I got anywhere else to go?" Porter didn't answer that. They reached Iron Ridge Ranch late in the afternoon of the second day. Mara saw the main house first, a long, low building made of logs and stone, smoke coming from 2 chimneys. Then the barn, massive and weathered. Then the bunkhouse, smaller but solid looking. And beyond all that, scattered across the valley, hundreds of cattle, dark shapes against the snow. Porter led her to the main house and dismounted. "Wait here." Mara stayed on the horse, watching. A few men had stopped working to stare at her. She could feel their eyes cataloging everything: her size, her face, her worn-out clothes. One of them said something she couldn't hear, and the others laughed. The door to the main house opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40 years old. He had dark hair going gray at the temples and a face that looked like it had been carved out of the same stone as the mountains. He walked over to Mara and looked up at her. "Miss Holloway?" "Yes." "I'm Rhett Mercer. Thank you for coming." He offered his hand. Mara hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm but not crushing. His eyes were gray and direct, and they didn't slide away from hers like most people's did. "Porter, help her down," Rhett said. Porter helped Mara dismount, which was more humiliating than climbing up had been. Her legs were stiff, and she stumbled a little when she hit the ground. One of the watching men snickered. Rhett turned toward them. "Get back to work." The men scattered. "Come inside," Rhett said to Mara. "We'll talk." The main house was warm and smelled like leather and wood smoke. Rhett led her to a large room with a stone fireplace and a heavy wooden table. Maps and papers covered one wall. A rifle hung over the mantel. "Sit," Rhett said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Mara sat. Rhett poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot on the fire and handed her one. She wrapped both hands around it, grateful for the heat. "I'll be direct," Rhett said, sitting across from her. "I need a cook. The last one quit 3 months ago after one of the men threw a plate at his head. Before that, we went through 2 others. One left in the middle of the night, the other lasted 6 days. The men are eating garbage and they're angry about it, and angry men are dangerous men. I need someone who can cook decent food and won't quit the first time someone says something nasty." "Why me?" Mara asked. "Because everyone I asked in town said you could cook, and because I figured someone who's lived alone this long isn't easily scared." "Who told you about me?" "Tom Breslin. He worked your father's logging camp years ago, said you fed 20 men on almost nothing and never complained once." Mara remembered Tom, big Norwegian fellow with a missing finger. He'd always been kind to her. "Tom Breslin's still alive, just barely. He's foreman at the Double T now, down south. I ran into him last month and asked if he knew anyone. He gave me your name." Mara sipped the coffee. It was strong and bitter and better than anything she'd had in months. "What happened to your last cook?" "Like I said, someone threw a plate. I mean the one before that. And the one before that." Rhett leaned back in his chair. "The first one couldn't handle the isolation. The second one got in a fight with one of the hands and left. The third one was the plate situation. So you've got violent men who don't want to cook. I've got frustrated men who want a good cook. There's a difference." "Is there?" Rhett met her eyes. "Yes, these men aren't bad. They're tired and overworked, and they've been eating slop for months. They need someone to take care of them, even if they don't know it yet. And I'm asking if you're willing to try." Mara thought about the cabin, the empty shelves, Mrs. Pritchard's thin smile. $40 a month, she said, and my own cabin. That's right. And if one of them throws a plate at me, then I'll throw him off the ranch. "You said that to the last cook?" "The last cook was a man. He could defend himself. You can't. So I'm making it clear right now, anyone hurts you, they're gone. No second chances." Mara studied his face. He looked like he meant it, but men said a lot of things they meant until it became inconvenient. "I'll try it for a month," she said. "If it doesn't work, you pay me for the time and let me leave." "Fair enough." Rhett stood and offered his hand again. "Welcome to Iron Ridge." They shook on it. Rhett showed her to the kitchen, which was attached to the main house, but had its own entrance. It was bigger than her entire cabin. A massive iron stove, long wooden counters, shelves stocked with flour and sugar and salt and coffee. A window looked out over the valley. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust and grease. "The men eat in the bunkhouse," Rhett said. "You cook here, and Porter or one of the others will carry the food over. 3 meals a day. Breakfast at 6, lunch at noon, supper at 7. Sundays, you get the afternoon off after lunch." "What do they like to eat?" "Anything that's not beans." Mara walked around the kitchen, opening cabinets and drawers. Someone had left a half-rotted potato in one of the bins. She threw it out. "When do I start?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning. I'll have Porter bring you some supplies from the storehouse tonight. Your cabin's across the yard. I'll show you. The cabin was small but clean, with a real bed and a quilted blanket and a stove that actually worked. There was even a chair by the window and a shelf for books. Mara set her bag down and looked around, not quite believing it. There's a lock on the door, Rhett said from the doorway. Only you and I have keys. If anyone bothers you, you lock yourself in and come get me in the morning. They bother women often? They don't see women often. Most of them haven't been to town in months. I'm just saying, be careful. After Rhett left, Mara unpacked her things and made the bed. Through the window, she could see the bunkhouse, smoke rising from its chimney. She could hear voices inside, rough and loud, laughing about something. She wondered if they were laughing about her. Probably. She locked the door anyway. That night she lay in the real bed with the quilted blanket pulled up to her chin, listening to the wind howl outside. $40 a month, a warm place to sleep, food in the kitchen. It was more than she'd had in years. It was also terrifying. But Mara had learned a long time ago that you didn't get anywhere by being scared. You just kept moving forward and hoped you didn't fall off a cliff. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow she'd meet the men who were going to hate her. She might as well be rested for it. Morning came cold and dark. Mara got up before dawn and made her way to the kitchen by lamplight. The stove took some coaxing, but eventually came to life, heat spreading through the room. She found the supplies Porter had left the night before: eggs, bacon, flour, coffee, a jug of milk that was half frozen. She got to work. By 6 o'clock she had biscuits in the oven, bacon sizzling in 2 pans, and scrambled eggs keeping warm on the back of the stove. Coffee brewed in a pot big enough to water a horse. It smelled like food, real food, and Mara felt something close to pride as she loaded everything onto the serving trays. Porter came to carry the food to the bunkhouse. He stopped in the doorway and stared. "Miss Holloway, that smells like heaven." "It's just breakfast." "You don't understand. These men have been eating burned beans and hard biscuits for 3 months. This is going to change their lives." "Let's see if they eat it first." Porter carried the trays across the yard. Mara watched from the kitchen window. She saw him go inside, heard the voices go quiet, then get loud again. Different loud. Excited loud. 5 minutes later, Porter came back grinning. "They want to know if you're real." "What did you tell them?" "I said you were real, and if they ran you off, I'd shoot them myself." Mara almost smiled. The men ate everything. Every biscuit, every scrap of bacon, every bit of egg. They sent the trays back clean, and Porter said they were arguing over who got the last biscuit like it was a gold nugget. Lunch was beef stew with carrots and potatoes and thick slices of bread. Supper was roasted chicken with gravy and green beans from the stores. The men devoured all of it. Mara worked alone in the kitchen, and it felt good. She'd forgotten what it was like to do something she was good at, to make something people wanted. It didn't matter that they hadn't seen her yet. Didn't matter that they probably wouldn't like her when they did. For now, they liked her food, and that was enough. On the 3rd day, she ran out of flour. She found Rhett in the barn checking on a horse with a bad leg. "I need more flour," she said, "and sugar, and coffee if you have it." "There's a storehouse around back. Help yourself." The storehouse was a low building with a heavy door. Inside it was dim and cold and smelled like grain and leather. Mara found the flour sacks stacked along one wall and was dragging one toward the door when she heard voices outside. "Saw her yesterday. She's big as a barn." Porter said she can cook, though. "I don't care if she can cook like the angels. Look at her. Maybe she's got a nice personality." They all laughed at that. Mara stood very still in the darkness of the storehouse, the flour sack heavy in her arms. She knew she should wait until they left, should let them have their fun and pretend she hadn't heard. But she was tired of pretending. She pushed the door open and walked out into the daylight. 3 men stood there, all of them young and cocky-looking. They froze when they saw her. "Excuse me," Mara said, and walked past them toward the kitchen. Behind her, one of them whistled low. Another said something she didn't catch, and they all laughed again. Mara kept walking. She got the flour into the kitchen and dumped it on the counter harder than she needed to. Her hands were shaking. "It's fine," she told herself. "You knew this would happen. You knew what they'd think. It didn't matter. Except it did. It always did." That night, she made chicken and dumplings, and the men ate it all. Porter said they were asking when they'd get to meet her, and Mara said never if she could help it. "They're curious, that's all," Porter said. "They're cruel." "Some of them, not all. Mara cleaned the kitchen in silence. When Porter left, she locked the door and stood there in the dim light, looking at her reflection in the dark window. A big woman in a flour-dusted apron, plain face, plain hair, nothing special, nothing anyone would want. She'd spent her whole life trying not to be seen, and now she was locked in a kitchen on the edge of nowhere, feeding men who laughed at her. But $40 a month, a bed with a real mattress, food that wasn't cornmeal gruel. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even good. But it was better than starving alone in a cabin while the town pretended she didn't exist. So she'd stay. She'd cook their food and take their money and ignore their laughter. And maybe, just maybe, she'd save enough to get somewhere else. Somewhere no one knew her name or her face or all the ways she'd failed to be what people wanted. Somewhere she could finally disappear for real. The men didn't meet her for another week, and that week felt like borrowed time. Mara cooked and they ate, and nobody bothered her except to send back empty plates and requests for more. She learned their preferences without ever seeing their faces. Someone liked his coffee strong enough to strip paint. Someone else always took extra bread. One man, she didn't know which, left his bacon on the side of his plate every single morning, uneaten. She stored all of it away like ammunition. Information was power, even the small kind. On the 8th day, one of them came to the kitchen door. Mara was elbow deep in bread dough when she heard the knock. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door. A young man stood there, maybe 22, with red hair and freckles and the kind of smile that probably worked on girls in town. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "Name's Danny Frost. Mr. Mercer said to ask if you need anything from town. We're making a supply run." "I'm fine," Mara said. Danny's eyes flicked over her, quick and assessing, then away. "You sure? We could pick up?" I said I'm fine. "Yes, ma'am." He shifted his weight. "The food's been real good. Best we've had in a long time." "Thank you." "I mean it. The boys are real grateful." Mara almost laughed. The boys were real grateful right up until they saw her face, and then they'd go back to making jokes. She'd heard enough of them by now, voices carrying across the yard when they thought she wasn't listening. "Is there anything else?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Just wanted to say thanks." He tipped his hat again and left. Mara closed the door and went back to the bread. Her hands were shaking again. She hated that. Hated how one kind word could throw her off balance when years of cruel ones hadn't managed it. That afternoon, she made apple pie with the dried apples Porter had brought from the storehouse. 6 pies, golden and perfect, steam rising from the vents in the crust. She set them on the counter to cool and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She was good at this. Maybe it was the only thing she was good at, but it counted for something. Porter came to collect the supper trays and stopped dead when he saw the pies. "Miss Holloway, you trying to make these men fall in love with you?" "I'm trying to use up the apples before they go bad." "Well, you succeeded at both." He loaded the trays and paused. "They're going to want to thank you proper. Maybe come by and say it to your face." "Tell them not to. That'll just make them more curious." "I don't care," Porter sighed. "You can't hide in here forever. Watch me." But he was right. She couldn't hide forever, and she knew it. The ranch wasn't big enough for that. Eventually she'd run into them, and when she did, the jokes would start. The stares, the whispers that weren't quite quiet enough. She just wanted to put it off as long as possible. 2 days later, it snowed. Not the light dusting they'd had before, but a real storm that came down like a curtain and didn't stop. By noon, there was a foot of snow on the ground and more coming. By evening, the world outside the kitchen window was nothing but white. Mara made stew for supper, thick and hot, enough to fill 12 hungry men twice over. Porter came for it bundled like an Arctic explorer, stamping snow off his boots. "It's getting bad out there," he said. "Mr. Mercer says stay in your cabin tonight. Don't try to come back here for breakfast. We'll manage." "You can't cook," Mara said. "We'll figure it out." "You'll burn the place down," Porter grinned. "Probably, but you're not walking across that yard in this. Mr. Mercer's orders." Mara wanted to argue, but she'd seen how hard the wind was blowing. She'd freeze before she made it halfway. "Fine, but I'm coming back first thing in the morning, if the storm stops." It didn't stop. It snowed all night and into the next day. Mara woke in her cabin to a world transformed, everything buried under 2 feet of fresh powder. She couldn't see the bunkhouse from her window, could barely see the main house. She got dressed anyway and started for the kitchen. The snow came up to her knees and the wind tried to knock her over, but she pushed through one step at a time. Her face went numb. Her fingers went numb. She kept going. She was almost to the kitchen door when someone grabbed her arm. "What the hell are you doing?" Mara spun around. Rhett stood there in a heavy coat, his face red from the cold. "I'm making breakfast," she said. "In this? Are you insane? You said 3 meals a day. I also said stay in your cabin. Your men need to eat." "My men won't starve missing one breakfast." Rhett steered her toward the kitchen door. "Get inside before you freeze to death." The kitchen was cold, the stove unlit. Mara's hands were shaking so hard she couldn't work the matches. Rhett took them from her and got the fire started himself, then pulled a chair close to the stove. "Sit." "I need to—" "Sit down." Mara sat. Rhett poured coffee from the pot she'd left on the warming shelf the night before. It was lukewarm and bitter, but she drank it anyway. "You can't do that again," Rhett said. "It's not safe." "I've walked in snow before. Not like this. You could have gotten turned around, walked right past the buildings. People die in storms like this." "I didn't die." "You got lucky." He refilled her coffee. "I'm serious, Miss Holloway. Next time there's weather like this, you stay put. The men will understand." Mara wrapped her hands around the cup. Feeling was starting to come back to her fingers, painful and prickling. "I took this job to cook. That's what I'm going to do." "Not if you're dead." They stared at each other. Rhett's jaw was set in a way that said he wasn't backing down. Mara's probably looked the same. Finally, Rhett sighed. "You're stubborn." "So I've been told." "Fine, but if there's another storm, you wait until someone comes to get you. Porter or me. Don't try it alone." "Fine." "I mean it." "I said fine." Rhett left shaking his head. Mara got to work on breakfast, her hands still clumsy from the cold. She made oatmeal with brown sugar and cinnamon, bacon, and fresh biscuits. By the time Porter came for the trays, she'd almost forgotten how scared she'd been out there in the white blindness, the world erased around her. Almost. The storm lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, the sun came out, and the world glittered like someone had thrown diamonds everywhere. Mara walked to the kitchen, carefully this time, and found the yard full of men shoveling paths through the snow. One of them saw her and stopped working. Then another. Within seconds, they were all staring. Mara kept her head down and kept walking. Behind her, someone said something and the others laughed. Her face went hot despite the cold. She got inside and slammed the door harder than necessary. That night, Porter brought the supper trays back with a folded piece of paper on top. Mara opened it. The handwriting was crude but clear. "Thank you for the food. It's real good. The boys." Mara stared at the note for a long time. Then she folded it and put it in her apron pocket and didn't think about it again. Or tried not to. A week later, everything changed. It started with the bacon. Mara had noticed that one man always left his bacon untouched, and it had been bothering her. Waste bothered her. So that morning, she made eggs with the bacon crumbled into them, mixed in so he couldn't pick it out. The trays came back clean, every plate empty. "Huh," Mara said. Porter raised his eyebrows. "Something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." But something was right. She'd solved a puzzle she hadn't even meant to solve, and it felt good. The next morning, she left the coffee extra strong and put out more bread than usual. The morning after that, she made pancakes because the man who always took extra bread probably had a sweet tooth. She was right. Porter said they'd eaten the pancakes so fast he barely got them on the table. She started paying attention, really paying attention. The way a hunter pays attention to tracks. Someone liked pepper. Someone else couldn't handle spicy food. One man ate fast, another slow. One always cleaned his plate, another always left a little behind. Small things. Invisible things. But Mara saw them all and filed them away. She wasn't cooking for a faceless group anymore. She was cooking for 12 specific men with 12 specific appetites. And she was learning how to feed each one exactly what he needed. It was manipulation, sort of. But it was also care, and Mara had been good at caring for people once, before the world taught her not to bother. Maybe she could be good at it again. 3 weeks in, she was kneading bread dough when the kitchen door banged open. She jumped and spun around, flour flying. A man stood in the doorway, older than the others, maybe 50, with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He was holding his left hand wrapped in a bloody rag. "I need help," he said, and collapsed. Mara caught him before he hit the floor, which was impressive considering he outweighed her by 50 pounds, and she had bread dough on her hands. She dragged him to a chair and unwrapped the rag. The cut was deep, running across his palm from his thumb to his pinky. Blood welled up fast and dark. Mara grabbed a clean towel and pressed it down hard. "What happened?" "Knife slipped." His voice was tight with pain. "Was cutting rope." "Where's everyone else?" "North pasture, too far." Mara looked at the cut again. It needed stitches. Probably 6 or 7. She'd sewn up her father once after a logging accident, but that was different. That was her father. "I need to close this," she said. "It's going to hurt." "I know." She got her sewing kit from the shelf and threaded a needle with the thinnest thread she had. Not ideal, but better than nothing. She poured whiskey over the needle, over the thread, over her hands, then over the cut. The man sucked in a breath but didn't cry out. "What's your name?" Mara asked. "Jim Carson." "Well, Jim Carson, you picked a hell of a time to cut yourself." She pulled the edges of the cut together and pushed the needle through. Jim's hand jerked, but he held still. "Tell me something. Distract yourself." "Like what?" "Anything. Where are you from?" "Kentucky." His voice was strangled. "Little town called Harlan. You?" "Oregon. Coast." "Long way from home." "So are you." She pulled the thread through and started the next stitch. Jim's face had gone white, but he kept talking. "Came out here after the war, figured I'd seen enough of civilization." "Which war?" "The big one. The stupid one." Mara nodded. "A lot of men out here were running from something. War, debt, women, themselves." She didn't ask which one Jim was running from. She finished the stitches and tied them off, then wrapped his hand in clean bandages. "Keep it dry. Come back tomorrow and I'll check it." Jim looked at his hand, then at her. "You've done this before." "Once or twice." "You're good at it." Mara started cleaning up the blood. "You're good at not screaming." "We make a nice pair." Jim laughed, which surprised them both. "I guess we do." He left and Mara went back to her bread, but her hands were still shaking. Not from fear this time. From something else. Something that felt almost like purpose. Jim came back the next day like she'd told him to. The cut was clean. No infection. He brought her a carved wooden spoon as payment. "You didn't have to do that," Mara said. "I wanted to." Jim turned the spoon over in his good hand. "I make things when I can't sleep. Got a whole box of them. Figured you could use one." It was a good spoon, smooth and balanced, the handle carved with a simple pattern. Mara ran her thumb over it. "Thank you. Thank you for not letting me bleed to death." After he left, Mara put the spoon in her apron pocket next to the note from the boys. She was collecting things now, small kindnesses, evidence that maybe the world wasn't entirely made of cruelty. It was a dangerous thing to collect, but she did it anyway. That Sunday afternoon, her half-day off, Mara was sitting in her cabin reading when she heard shouting outside. She looked out the window and saw a group of men gathered in the yard, their voices loud and angry. She should have stayed inside, should have locked the door and pretended she hadn't heard anything. Instead, she went out. The men were arguing about something, gesturing wildly. As Mara got closer, she realized there was a kid in the middle of them, maybe 14, skinny and scared-looking. "He's a thief," one of the men was saying. "Caught him trying to steal from the storehouse." "I wasn't stealing," the kid said. "I was just..." "Just what? Just looking? Just helping yourself?" "I was hungry." "So you thought you'd take our food?" "I didn't take anything." Mara pushed through the circle of men. They were so focused on the kid they didn't notice her until she was standing between them. "What's going on?" she asked. The men fell silent. Up close, Mara could see the kid was in bad shape. His clothes were too thin for the weather, his face hollow with hunger. His lips were cracked and bleeding. "He tried to steal from us," said the man who'd been doing most of the talking. His name was Curtis, she'd learned. He had a mean streak a mile wide. "We're deciding what to do with him." "He said he didn't take anything." "He's a liar." "Did anyone actually see him take something?" Curtis glared at her. "He was in the storehouse. That's enough." "No, it's not." Mara looked at the kid. What's your name? Ben. His voice cracked. Ben Sawyer. Where are you from, Ben? Timber Creek. I got lost. Lost, Curtis said. That's a good one. How long have you been out here? Mara asked. 2 days? Maybe 3? I don't know. Ben was shaking now, from cold or fear or both. I just needed something to eat. I wasn't trying to steal, I swear. Mara turned to Curtis. He's half frozen and starving. Even if he was trying to steal, can you blame him? Yes, Curtis said flatly. We work for our food. He can do the same. He's a child. He's old enough to know better. The other men were watching now, waiting to see what would happen. Mara could feel the weight of their judgment. If she pushed too hard, they'd turn on her. But if she walked away, they'd do something to this kid. Something bad. I'll take responsibility for him, Mara said. Curtis blinked. What? I'll feed him. Make sure he gets back to town safe. That way he's not your problem. He's not your problem either. I'm making him my problem. Curtis looked like he wanted to argue, but one of the other men, Danny, the red-haired one who'd come to her door, put a hand on his shoulder. Let her handle it, Curtis. We've got work to do. Curtis shook him off, but stepped back. Fine, but if anything goes missing, it's on you. Nothing will go missing, Mara said. The men dispersed, muttering. Only Danny stayed behind. That was either really brave or really stupid, he said. Probably both. Mara looked at Ben, who was staring at her like she'd just sprouted wings. Come on, let's get you inside. She took him to the kitchen and sat him by the stove. He was shivering so hard his teeth rattled. Mara wrapped a blanket around his shoulders and put water on to boil. Thank you, Ben whispered. Don't thank me yet. Mara started cutting bread. Tell me the truth. Were you stealing? Ben's eyes dropped. I was going to. I didn't, but I was going to. Why? Because I'm hungry. I've been hungry for 2 months. What happened 2 months ago? My pa died. Winter fever. And then my ma couldn't pay the rent, and we got put out. She went to stay with her sister in Butte, but there wasn't room for me. So I've been managing. Mara set a bowl of stew in front of him. Eat. Ben ate like he was being timed, shoveling food into his mouth so fast Mara worried he'd choke. She let him finish, then gave him more, and he ate that too. When's the last time you had a real meal? She asked. I don't know. A while. Mara poured him coffee with sugar and cream. You can't stay here. The men won't allow it. I know. But I'll pack you food for the road. Enough to get you to Butte if you're careful, and I'll give you a blanket, a good one. Ben's eyes filled with tears. Why are you helping me? Because I know what it's like to be hungry, Mara thought. Because I know what it's like to have nowhere to go and no one who cares if you live or die. Because someone should have helped me once, and no one did. Because you need help, she said instead. She made him sleep in the kitchen that night, wrapped in blankets by the stove. She brought him breakfast in the morning, eggs and bacon and biscuits, and while he ate, she packed a sack with enough food to last a week if he stretched it. Bread and cheese and dried meat, apples, a tin of coffee. Head southeast, she told him. Stay on the road. It's about 60 miles to Butte, so it'll take you 4 or 5 days if you walk steady. Don't stop in any towns unless you have to. Yes, ma'am. And Ben, when you get to your mother, you tell her what happened, all of it. She'll be angry, but she'll understand. Ben nodded, clutching the food sack like it was treasure. I'll pay you back someday. I promise. Just stay alive. That's payment enough. She watched him walk down the road until he disappeared into the trees. Then she went back to the kitchen and started on lunch, feeling hollow and full at the same time. That evening, Rhett came to see her. I heard what you did, he said. I'm sure you did. Curtis is angry. Curtis is always angry. Rhett almost smiled. Fair point, but you made an enemy today. I've got plenty of those already. One more won't hurt. Maybe not, but be careful. Curtis doesn't forget. After Rhett left, Mara stood at the window watching the sun set over the mountains. She thought about Ben walking alone through the snow. She thought about all the other Bens out there, hungry and scared and invisible. She couldn't save them all, could barely save herself most days. But she'd saved one, and maybe that counted for something. The next morning, she found a dead rabbit on her doorstep. At first she thought it was a threat, Curtis making good on his anger, but then she saw the note tied to its leg. For the stew. J.C. Jim Carson. The man with the cut hand. Mara picked up the rabbit and took it inside. It was already cleaned and dressed, ready for the pot. She held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, the weight of what it meant. Someone had thought about her, had done something kind without being asked. It was such a small thing. But small things could save you when the big things were trying to kill you. She made rabbit stew that night, rich and savory, and the men ate every drop. The weeks rolled on. February turned into March, and the snow started melting into mud. Mara fell into a rhythm. Wake, cook, clean, sleep, repeat. It was hard work, but honest work, and she was getting good at reading the men without meeting their eyes. She knew Curtis hated her, knew Danny thought she was brave, knew Jim Carson left her small gifts sometimes, a carved bird, a smooth stone, a handful of wildflowers when they finally started blooming. She knew the youngest hand, a boy named Peter, cried sometimes at night when he thought no one could hear. Knew the oldest, a man called Dutch, hadn't spoken in 3 years. Knew Porter had a sweetheart in Timber Creek he wrote to every week. She learned all of it through food and listening and paying attention to the things people thought were invisible. And slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, the men started treating her different. Not nice exactly, but not cruel either. They stopped making jokes where she could hear them, stopped staring when she crossed the yard, started saying ma'am when they passed her, and meaning it. It wasn't friendship, wasn't even respect, not really, but it was something. And for Mara, who'd spent most of her life being nothing to everyone, something felt like everything. One morning in late March, she woke to find a crate on her doorstep. Inside were 6 chickens, clucking softly, and a note in Rhett's handwriting. For eggs. They're yours. Mara built a small coop behind her cabin and tended the chickens like they were made of gold. Every morning she collected eggs, sometimes 3, sometimes 5, and used them in her cooking. The men noticed. Of course they noticed. These eggs are different, Danny said to Porter one morning, loud enough for Mara to hear through the kitchen window. They taste better. They're the same eggs as always, Porter said. No, they're not. These are special. Mara smiled despite herself. That night she found another gift. This time it was a jar of honey, left on the kitchen counter with no note. She didn't know who it was from. Didn't matter. She made honey cakes the next day and watched the men through the window as Porter delivered them. Watched them bite into the sweet, dense cakes and close their eyes like they were tasting childhood. Maybe they were. Maybe that's what good food did. Reminded you of a time when things were simpler, when someone cared enough to make something just for you. Mara had been that someone for her father once. Then he died, and she'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed. Now she was remembering. The men still didn't talk to her much. Still kept their distance. But the gifts kept coming. A bag of coffee beans, a new apron, a book of recipes with half the pages missing but the other half intact. They were saying thank you the only way they knew how. And Mara was learning how to accept it. Spring arrived for real in April, and with it came a softness to the air that made everything feel possible. The snow was gone. Green things were growing. The world felt less like a place trying to kill you and more like a place you might actually survive. Mara was in the kitchen making bread when she heard the commotion outside. Horses, shouting, something wrong. She ran to the window and saw Rhett riding in hard, Danny beside him, both their horses lathered and blowing. Behind them, tied to Danny's saddle, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. Dark hair, pale face, wrapped in a blanket that was too thin for the weather. Mara was outside before she realized she'd moved. "What happened?" she called. "Found her 2 miles out," Rhett said, dismounting. "She was just walking, in the middle of nowhere, no coat, no food, nothing." Mara reached for the girl. She was light as air, her skin cold and clammy. "Bring her inside." They carried her into the main house, and Mara wrapped her in every blanket she could find. The girl didn't cry, didn't speak, just stared at nothing with eyes that had seen too much. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Mara asked gently. No answer. "Where's your family?" Nothing. Rhett and Danny exchanged looks. "We'll ride out," Rhett said. "See if we can find anyone. There's got to be a homestead nearby." They left, and Mara was alone with the girl. She made warm milk with honey and held it to the girl's lips. The girl drank a little, then pushed it away. "It's okay," Mara said softly. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." The girl's eyes met hers for just a second, and Mara saw the fear there, the bone-deep terror of someone who'd learned that adults couldn't be trusted. She knew that fear, had lived with it herself once. "I'm Mara," she said. "I'm going to take care of you until we find your people. Is that okay?" The girl didn't answer, but after a long moment, she let Mara pull the blankets tighter around her shoulders. It was a start. Rhett and Danny came back 3 hours later with news that hit like a fist. They'd found the homestead, what was left of it. "Fire," Rhett said, his face grim. "Burned to the foundation. Looks like it happened yesterday, maybe the day before." Mara's hands tightened on the blanket she was holding. The girl was asleep now, finally, her small body curled up on the sofa in Rhett's office. "Anyone else?" "2 bodies in the rubble. Adults. We couldn't—" Rhett rubbed his face. "We couldn't tell much, but there's no one else alive out there." "Her parents," Mara whispered. "Probably." Danny stood by the door looking sick. She walked 2 miles in nothing but a nightdress. In this weather. How did she even survive? "Kids are tougher than they look," Rhett said, but his voice was hollow. Mara looked at the sleeping girl. 6 years old and alone in the world. No family, no home. Nothing left but the nightmares she'd carry for the rest of her life. "What happens to her now?" Mara asked. "I'll ride to Timber Creek tomorrow," Rhett said. "See if there's family. If not, there's an orphanage in Helena." "An orphanage?" Mara's voice came out sharp. "You're going to send her to an orphanage?" "I don't have a choice. She can't stay here." "Why not?" Rhett stared at her. "Because this is a ranch, with 12 men and no women except you. It's not a place for a child. She needs somewhere safe, somewhere warm. This is both those things." "For how long? A week? A month? Then what?" "She needs a real home, Mara, a family. She needs to not be shipped off to some building full of strangers right after watching her parents die." Mara kept her voice low, but the fury in it was unmistakable. "Give her time. Let her heal a little before you send her away." Rhett and Danny exchanged looks. Finally, Rhett sighed. 2 weeks. Then I take her to Timber Creek and we figure out what's next. That's the best I can do." It wasn't enough, but it was something. The girl woke up that evening screaming. Mara was there in seconds, gathering her up even though the girl fought her, small fists pounding against Mara's chest. It's okay, you're safe," Mara said over and over, holding on until the girl finally went limp and sobbed into her shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time, Mara rocking her gently, feeling the tiny body shake with grief too big for words. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Mara asked when the crying slowed. The girl didn't answer. "Can you tell me your name?" Nothing. Mara tried for 3 days. The girl wouldn't speak, wouldn't say her name or where she'd come from or what had happened. She ate when Mara put food in front of her and slept when exhaustion dragged her under, but otherwise she just stared at nothing with those enormous, haunted eyes. On the 4th day, Mara was making bread in the kitchen when the girl appeared in the doorway. She'd been sleeping in Rhett's office on a makeshift bed, but now she stood there in the borrowed nightgown that was too big for her, watching. "You want to help?" Mara asked. The girl took a step forward. "Come here." Mara pulled over a chair and helped her climb up. "You ever make bread before?" No answer, but the girl reached for the dough. "Like this," Mara said, guiding her small hands. "Push down, fold over, push down, fold over. That's it." They worked in silence. The girl's hands were clumsy at first, but she caught on quick. When the dough was ready, Mara shaped it into loaves and let the girl help put them in the pans. "Good job," Mara said. The ghost of a smile crossed the girl's face, just for a second. Then it was gone. But Mara had seen it. That afternoon, Curtis came to the kitchen. Mara was cleaning up from lunch and didn't hear him until he spoke. "So you're keeping her?" Mara turned. Curtis stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his face hard. "She's staying until Mr. Mercer finds her family." "She doesn't have family. You know that. Everyone knows that." "Then until he finds somewhere for her to go." "Somewhere." Curtis laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean you're getting attached to some orphan kid, and now you think you can keep her here like a pet?" "Get out." This is a working ranch. We don't have time for. I said, get out. Curtis didn't move. You're making things complicated. First it's the thief kid, now this. You keep bringing problems here. The only problem I see is you. Mara's voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. Now leave before I tell Mr. Mercer you were in here harassing me. Harassing. Curtis took a step forward. That's a strong word. It's an accurate word. For a moment, Mara thought he might actually come at her. His hands were clenched into fists and his face was red with anger. But then Danny appeared behind him. Curtis, boss wants to see you. Curtis turned slowly. This isn't over, he said to Mara, then shouldered past Danny and left. Danny lingered in the doorway. You okay? I'm fine. He's all talk. Don't let him scare you. I'm not scared of Curtis. That was a lie, and they both knew it, but Danny didn't call her on it. The kid doing all right? He asked instead. She's managing. What's her name? She won't say. Danny frowned. She hasn't talked at all? Not a word. That's not good. I know. Mara wiped her hands on her apron. But she's starting to trust me. A little. That's something. After Danny left, Mara found the girl in the office, sitting by the window. She'd been doing that a lot, staring out at the mountains like she was looking for something, or someone. You hungry? Mara asked. The girl shook her head. Mara sat down beside her. I lost my parents too. My mother when I was 12, my father when I was 20. It doesn't stop hurting, but it gets different, quieter. The girl looked at her for the first time, really looked, and Mara saw the question in her eyes. It's okay to be sad, Mara said, and it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to not want to talk about it, but you're safe here. I promise you that. The girl's lip trembled. Then she crawled into Mara's lap and buried her face against her shoulder. She didn't cry, just held on like Mara was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid and treacherous. Mara held her back and wondered how you were supposed to let go of something like this when the time came. That night, a rider came to the ranch. Mara heard the commotion from her cabin and looked out to see a woman dismounting from a beautiful black mare. Even in the dim light, Mara could tell she was stunning, tall and slender with golden hair piled on her head, and a riding outfit that probably cost more than Mara made in a year. The woman walked straight to the main house like she owned it. Mara didn't think much of it until Porter knocked on her door an hour later. Miss Holloway, Mr. Mercer wants to see you. In the house. Mara's stomach dropped. Why? Didn't say. But there's a lady with him. Name's Celeste Vaughn. The name meant nothing to Mara, but the way Porter said it, like he was announcing royalty, told her everything she needed to know. She followed Porter to the main house. Inside, Rhett stood by the fireplace with the blonde woman beside him. Up close, she was even more beautiful, with pale blue eyes and perfect skin and the kind of face that made other women feel like mistakes. Miss Holloway, Rhett said, this is Celeste Vaughn. Celeste, this is Mara Holloway, our cook. Celeste's eyes swept over Mara once, quick and dismissive. Charmed. Miss Vaughn wanted to meet you, Rhett said, and there was something odd in his voice, something careful. Why? Mara asked. Celeste smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I've heard so much about you. The men in town can't stop talking about Rhett's new cook. Apparently you've worked miracles out here. I just cook food. Oh, I'm sure it's more than that. Celeste moved closer, and Mara caught the scent of expensive perfume. They say the men here worship you, that you've changed everything. They're exaggerating. Are they? Celeste glanced at Rhett. I also heard about the little girl. How sweet that you've taken her in. Playing mother must be so fulfilling for you. The words were polite, but the tone underneath was pure venom. Mara felt it like a blade between her ribs. I'm helping a child who has no one, Mara said carefully. That's all. Of course. Celeste's smile widened. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. It's just that, well, this is such an unusual place for a woman, especially a woman like you, all alone with all these men. People do talk. Let them talk. Oh, they will. They are. Celeste turned to Rhett. Darling, I think I've taken up enough of everyone's time. Walk me out? Darling. The word hung in the air like smoke. Rhett's jaw tightened. Of course. He escorted Celeste outside, and Mara stood there feeling like she'd just been in a fight without knowing the rules. Porter appeared beside her. That's his ex-fiancée, Porter said quietly. His what? They were engaged 3 years ago. Then he called it off and came out here. She didn't take it well. What's she doing here now? That, Porter said, is a very good question. Mara went back to her cabin but couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Celeste's perfect face, that poisonous smile. The way she'd looked at Mara like she was something stuck to her shoe. She'd made an enemy tonight. A dangerous one. The next morning, the trouble started. Mara went to the kitchen to find the door already open. Inside, flour was scattered across the floor, sugar spilled on the counter, the coffee canister knocked over. Someone had gone through her supplies and made a mess of everything. It took her an hour to clean up. She was scrubbing the floor when Rhett came in. What happened? Someone broke in last night, made a mess. Who? I don't know. But she did know. Or at least she had a pretty good idea. 3 days later, it happened again. This time they dumped salt in the sugar bin, spoiled the milk, and smashed half a dozen eggs on the floor. Mara cleaned it up and said nothing. Then one of the ranch hands, a quiet man named Paul, got sick. Violently sick. He was up all night vomiting, and by morning he was so weak he couldn't stand. Curtis was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. It's the food. She poisoned him. That's ridiculous, Danny said. Is it? He ate breakfast yesterday, and 6 hours later he's dying. You do the math. He's not dying, he's got food poisoning. It happens. Not with good food, it doesn't. And she's been feeding us just fine for months. Why would it suddenly... Maybe she's mad about something. Maybe she decided to teach us a lesson. The argument happened in the yard, loud enough for Mara to hear from the kitchen. She stood at the window, hands clenched, watching them debate whether she was a poisoner. Rhett shut it down. Enough! Paul ate something bad, but it wasn't Mara's cooking. Half of you ate the same breakfast, and you're all fine. Then what was it? Curtis demanded. I don't know, but throwing accusations around isn't going to help. That night, Mara found a dead rat in the water barrel outside the kitchen. Someone had put it there deliberately, let it rot just enough to contaminate the water. If she'd used that water in her cooking, half the ranch would have gotten sick. She pulled the rat out with shaking hands and dumped the barrel. Then she sat down on the kitchen steps and tried not to cry. Someone was trying to ruin her. Someone who wanted her gone. The girl found her there. She'd been staying close to Mara lately, following her around like a shadow. Now she climbed up onto the step beside Mara and leaned against her. I'm okay, Mara said. Just tired. The girl didn't believe her, Mara could tell. But she stayed there anyway, warm and solid and real. And that helped more than any words could have. The attacks got worse. Supplies went missing. The chickens were let out of their coop and scattered. Someone cut the rope on the clothesline, so all the clean laundry fell in the mud. Small things. Petty things. But they added up. The men noticed. Some of them, anyway. Jim Carson started checking the kitchen every morning before Mara arrived. Danny walked her back to her cabin at night. Porter kept watch during the day, his eyes sharp and suspicious. You know who's doing this? Jim asked one morning. I have an idea. Tell Mr. Mercer. And say what? I think someone's sabotaging me, but I can't prove it? That'll go over well. It's better than letting it continue. But Mara didn't tell Rhett. Partly because she had no proof. Partly because she didn't want to seem weak. Mostly because she knew that if she made accusations, it would only get worse. Then the fire happened. Mara woke to smoke. For a second she thought she was dreaming, but then she smelled it, thick and acrid, burning wood, and something else. She threw off the blankets and ran outside. The storehouse was on fire. Flames licked up the walls, orange and hungry, consuming everything inside. The men were already there, forming a bucket brigade, shouting orders, trying to contain it. Mara grabbed a bucket and joined the line. They fought the fire for an hour, passing water hand to hand, throwing it on the flames until their arms ached and their faces were black with soot. By the time they got it under control, the storehouse was a smoking ruin. Everything inside was gone. Months of supplies, flour, sugar, coffee, beans, rice, dried meat, all of it destroyed. Rhett stood looking at the wreckage, his face carved from stone. This wasn't an accident. No, Jim said. It wasn't. Someone set this deliberately. The men exchanged glances. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Everyone except Curtis, who was very carefully not looking at anyone. We'll deal with this in the morning, Rhett said finally. Get some sleep, all of you. Nobody slept. Mara went back to her cabin and sat by the window, watching the smoke rise from the burned storehouse. The girl was asleep in the corner. Mara had been letting her stay there more often, afraid to leave her alone. Someone knocked. Mara opened the door to find Danny standing there, his face grim. They're saying it's your fault. What? Curtis is telling everyone you left a lamp burning in the storehouse. Says you're careless, that you've been acting strange lately. Some of the men are listening. I wasn't anywhere near the storehouse yesterday. I know, but Curtis is convincing, and people are scared. We just lost months of supplies. If we can't replace them, we're in trouble. Mara leaned against the doorframe. So this is it. This is how they get rid of me. No one's getting rid of you. Danny, half those men already think I poisoned Paul. Now they think I burned down the storehouse. How long before they decide I'm too much trouble and demand Rhett send me away? Rhett won't do that. Won't he? If it's between me and keeping this ranch running, what do you think he'll choose? Danny didn't have an answer for that. The next morning, Mara went to the kitchen expecting to find it destroyed too, but it was untouched, clean and quiet and waiting. She made breakfast with what little she had left, the supplies in the kitchen pantry, the eggs from her chickens. It wasn't much, but it was something. The men ate in silence, no one meeting her eyes. After breakfast, Rhett called a meeting. Everyone gathered in the barn, all 12 ranch hands, Porter, and Rhett himself. Mara stood off to the side, apart from them, feeling like she was on trial. Someone burned down our storehouse, Rhett said without preamble. Someone on this ranch. And I want to know who. Silence. We can't survive the summer without those supplies, which means someone here just jeopardized everything we've worked for, everything you've worked for, your wages, your jobs, your lives, all of it. Still silence. If anyone knows anything, speak now. Because if I find out later that you knew and said nothing, you're done. Off this ranch permanently. The men shifted uncomfortably. Curtis stood with his arms crossed, his face blank. Nothing? Rhett's voice was cold. Fine. Then we'll do this the hard way. Starting tomorrow, no one goes anywhere alone. You work in pairs, you eat in pairs, you sleep in pairs. Someone's watching you every minute. And if I catch anyone near the kitchen, the remaining supplies, or Miss Holloway's cabin, I'll assume you're guilty. That's insane, Curtis said. You're going to treat us all like criminals because someone made a mistake? It wasn't a mistake, it was arson. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because I found this in the wreckage. Rhett held up a charred piece of rope with knots tied in it. Someone used this as a fuse, soaked it in kerosene, and lit it. This was deliberate. Curtis's face flickered, just for a second. But Mara saw it, and so did Rhett. You have something to say, Curtis? No, sir. You sure? Because you look like you have something to say. I just think you're being unfair. We're all tired and hungry, and now you want us to work in pairs like we're children? It's insulting. You know what's insulting? Someone burning down my storehouse and then pretending they don't know anything about it. Rhett stepped forward. If you have a problem with how I run this ranch, Curtis, you're free to leave. Otherwise, you'll follow my rules or you'll be gone anyway. Curtis's jaw worked. Yes, sir. The meeting broke up. Mara started back to the kitchen, but Rhett caught her arm. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For not stopping this sooner. I should have known something was going on. You couldn't have known. I should have. He looked tired suddenly, older than his 40 years. Someone's trying to drive you away, and I think I know who. Curtis? Maybe. Or maybe someone's paying Curtis to do it for them. Celeste. The name hung between them, unspoken but obvious. Why would she do this? Mara asked. Rhett was quiet for a long time. Because she thinks you're competition. Competition for what? For me. Mara stared at him. That's insane. I'm your cook. I know, but Celeste doesn't think like normal people. She's used to getting what she wants, and she wanted me. When I broke off the engagement, it humiliated her. Now she's back, and she's seen things that aren't there. Things like what? Things like me caring about you. The words hung in the air. Mara felt her face go hot. I should get back to the kitchen. Mara, I have work to do. She pulled away and walked back to the kitchen on legs that felt unsteady. Behind her, she could feel Rhett watching. That afternoon, the well went dry. Not slowly, not gradually. One minute there was water, the next there was nothing. Jim hauled up bucket after bucket of mud and stones and finally gave up. "It's been poisoned," he said. "Or blocked. Someone dropped something down there." Rhett looked like he wanted to hit something. "How long to clear it?" "A week, maybe more. And that's if we're lucky." "Where are we supposed to get water?" "There's a stream about 2 miles west. We can haul it, but it's going to be slow." Without water, the ranch couldn't function. The cattle needed it, the men needed it, the kitchen needed it. Mara watched Rhett's face and saw the moment he made his decision. He was going to send her away. It was the only thing that made sense. With her gone, the attacks would stop. The ranch could get back to normal. She didn't wait for him to say it. That night, Mara packed her bag. Everything she owned, right back into the same canvas sack she'd arrived with. It didn't take long. She put the carved spoon from Jim in her pocket, folded the note from the boys into her Bible, and looked around the cabin one last time. It had been a good place. For a while. She was reaching for the door when it opened. The girl stood there in her nightgown, eyes wide. "I have to go," Mara said. The girl shook her head. "It's not safe for me here anymore. And it's not safe for anyone else while I'm here." The girl grabbed Mara's hand and held on tight. "You'll be okay. Mr. Mercer will take care of you. He'll find you a family, a real family, and—" The girl's other hand came up to her throat. She opened her mouth, and for the first time since they'd found her, she spoke. "Don't." The word was raspy and small. "Please don't go." Mara's eyes filled. "Sweetheart, they'll hurt you. If you leave, they'll hurt you." "No one's going to hurt me." "They hurt Mama. They hurt Papa." The girl's voice broke. "I saw them, the lady and the man. They came at night, and Mama told me to hide, and I hid. But I saw them set the fire." The world stopped. "What lady?" Mara whispered. "The pretty one, with yellow hair." "Celeste." Mara knelt down, hands on the girl's shoulders. "Are you sure?" The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She was angry. She said Papa knew something, said he was going to tell people. She said they had to stop him." "What did your papa know?" "I don't know, but they killed him. They killed Mama, and if you leave—" The girl sobbed. "If you leave, she'll kill you too." Mara pulled her close, mind racing. Celeste had killed this child's parents, to keep them quiet about something. And now she was destroying the ranch piece by piece, trying to drive Mara away, or worse, trying to kill her too. The door slammed open. Jim Carson stood there with Danny and Porter behind him, all three of them armed. "You're not leaving," Jim said. "Jim, we know what's happening. We know Curtis is working for that woman, and we're not going to let her win. She'll destroy everything. Then we'll fight back." Danny stepped forward. "We're tired of running from people like her, tired of letting them push us around. You stood up for that kid in the snow. You saved Paul when he was sick. You fed us when we were mean to you. Now it's our turn." Porter nodded. "You're one of us now. And we take care of our own." Mara looked at their faces. Rough, scarred, determined. These men who'd mocked her, who'd made her life hard, who'd learned, slowly and stubbornly, to see her as human. "She's dangerous," Mara said. "So are we," Jim said. "When we need to be." Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the darkness, Celeste was planning her next move. And on Iron Ridge Ranch, 12 men and 1 woman and 1 traumatized little girl decided they weren't going to run anymore. They were going to fight. The girl's name was Sarah. She told them that night, sitting in Rhett's office surrounded by men who'd become an unlikely army. Her voice was still rough from disuse, but the words came easier once she started. "Sarah Whitmore. My papa was David Whitmore. He worked for Miss Vaughn's father sometimes. Did their books." Rhett leaned forward. "Their books? What kind of books?" "Numbers. Papa said Mr. Vaughn wasn't honest, said he was cheating people. Papa was going to tell someone important about it, but then—" Sarah's voice cracked. "Then they came." "Who came with Miss Vaughn?" Rhett asked gently. "A big man, dark hair. He had a scar." Sarah touched her cheek. "Right here." The men exchanged glances. Curtis had a scar exactly like that. That son of a... Danny started, but Jim cut him off with a look. Not in front of the kid. Rhett stood and walked to the window, his shoulders tight with rage. Curtis has been working for her this whole time. The sabotage, the fire, all of it. He's been trying to destroy us from the inside. Why? Porter asked. What does she get out of ruining your ranch? Revenge. Rhett's voice was flat. When I broke off our engagement, her father lost a business deal he was counting on. My family had connections he needed. Without the marriage, those connections disappeared. He lost a lot of money. So she's destroying your ranch to get back at you? Mara said. That's insane. The Vaughns don't lose gracefully. Rhett turned back to them. And they definitely don't lose twice. If her father's books are dirty and David Whitmore was going to expose him, Celeste would do anything to stop it, including murder. Sarah started crying again, and Mara pulled her close. The girl's whole body trembled. We need proof, Jim said. The kid's testimony might not be enough. She was traumatized. It was dark. A lawyer could tear her apart on the stand. Then we get proof. Rhett's jaw set in a way Mara had learned meant he'd made up his mind. Where's Curtis now? Bunkhouse, Danny said. He's been laying low since the well got poisoned. Get him. Bring him here. And someone ride to Timber Creek and fetch the sheriff. Boss, if we accuse him without proof, Porter started. I don't need proof to fire him, and once he's off this ranch, we can figure out the rest. Rhett looked at each of them in turn. I won't force anyone to be part of this. If you want to walk away, do it now. No hard feelings. Nobody moved. All right then, Rhett pulled his rifle down from above the mantel. Let's go get him. They found Curtis in the bunkhouse playing cards with two of the younger hands. He looked up when they came in, and Mara saw the calculation in his eyes, counting numbers, measuring distances, looking for an escape route. Need something, boss? Curtis asked, too casual. You're fired. Pack your things and get out. Curtis set down his cards slowly. Mind telling me why? You know why. Actually, I don't. I've been working my tail off for you for 3 years, and now you're throwing me out? That doesn't seem fair. Fair? Rhett's voice was dangerously quiet. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the storehouse fire, the poisoned well, the dead rat in the water barrel. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, because you did all of it, on Celeste Vaughn's orders. Something flickered across Curtis's face. Fear, maybe, or respect that Rhett had figured it out. Prove it. I have a witness who saw you and Celeste murder David and Eleanor Whitmore. Curtis's face went white, then red. Then he lunged for the rifle propped by his bunk. 3 things happened at once. Jim grabbed Curtis from behind. Danny kicked the rifle away, and Rhett pointed his own rifle straight at Curtis's head. Don't, Rhett said. Curtis struggled in Jim's grip, breathing hard. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Rhett nodded to Jim. Tie him up. We'll hold him until the sheriff gets here. They bound Curtis's hands and locked him in the tack room. He didn't go quietly, shouting threats and accusations the whole way. Mara listened from the yard, Sarah pressed against her side. Is he going to hurt us? Sarah whispered. No, sweetheart. He can't hurt anyone now. But even as she said it, Mara knew it wasn't true. Curtis was just a weapon. The real danger was the woman who'd aimed him. Celeste arrived the next morning. She rode in on her black mare like she was arriving at a garden party, wearing a green riding habit that probably cost more than the ranch made in 6 months. 2 men rode with her, hired guns by the look of them, hard-faced and heavily armed. Rhett met her in the yard. Mara watched from the kitchen window, Sarah beside her. Rhett, darling, Celeste said, dismounting with practiced grace. I heard there was some trouble. I came to see if I could help. You can help by leaving. Celeste's smile didn't waver. That's no way to treat an old friend, especially when I've come all this way to offer assistance. I understand you lost your storehouse. Such a tragedy. And your well is contaminated? How dreadful. You would know all about it, wouldn't you? Me? Celeste pressed a hand to her chest. Darling, why would I know anything about your ranch troubles? I've been in town this whole time. Funny, because I have Curtis locked in my tack room, and he's very eager to tell me all about who's been paying him. The smile finally cracked, just for a second. Curtis is a liar. He's also a murderer, just like you. That's a serious accusation. Celeste's voice went cold. I hope you have proof. I have a witness. Really? Who? Rhett hesitated and Celeste's eyes sharpened. She looked around the yard, taking inventory. Her gaze landed on the kitchen window, on Mara and Sarah standing there. Ah, Celeste said softly. The child. How convenient that she survived the fire. Stay away from her. Or what? You'll have me arrested? On the word of a traumatized 6-year-old who probably doesn't even remember what happened. No court would convict me, Rhett. You know that. Then I'll handle it myself. Will you? Celeste moved closer, her voice dropping. Think carefully, darling. My father has friends. Judges, politicians, men who can make your life very difficult. You could lose this ranch, lose everything. Is one little girl's testimony really worth that? Rhett's rifle came up, not quite pointing at her, but close enough. Get off my land. The hired guns tensed, hands moving to their weapons. For a moment, the whole world balanced on a knife's edge. Then Celeste laughed. Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over, Rhett. You're going to wish you'd taken my offer. What offer? The one where you send that woman away. Celeste's eyes flicked back to the kitchen. Your cook, the one you've gotten so attached to. Send her packing and I'll leave you alone. Keep her and I'll destroy you piece by piece until there's nothing left. Mara's not going anywhere. Then neither am I. Celeste remounted her mare with fluid grace. Enjoy the war, darling. You're going to lose. She rode off, the hired guns following. Rhett stood in the yard for a long time after they disappeared, staring at nothing. Mara found him there an hour later. You should have taken the deal. What deal? The one where you send me away and she leaves you alone. Rhett turned to face her. That's not a deal, that's surrender. It's survival, for you and the ranch and everyone here. At what cost? We let her win? Let her drive you out because she's got money and power and connections? Yes, Mara said simply. Because that's how the world works. People like her always win. Not this time. Rhett, no. His voice was firm. I spent 3 years running from her, and look where it got me. She still found me, still came after me. Some people you can't escape by running. You have to stand and fight, or they'll just keep chasing you forever. She'll destroy you. Maybe, but I'd rather be destroyed fighting than live the rest of my life knowing I gave in. Mara wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being stupid, that nobility didn't pay bills or save ranches or protect the people who depended on him. But looking at his face, she knew it wouldn't matter. Rhett had drawn his line in the dirt, and he wasn't going to move. The question was whether she would stand with him or walk away. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Celeste's face, that cold smile, the casual way she'd threatened everything Rhett had built. The woman was a predator, and Mara was the bait in the trap. She was sitting by her window when she saw movement in the yard. Someone sneaking toward the main house. Mara's heart jumped. She grabbed the kitchen knife she'd started keeping by her bed and slipped outside. The figure was halfway to the house when Mara called out, "Stop right there." The person froze, then turned slowly. It was one of Celeste's hired guns. Up close, he was even uglier than from a distance, with a broken nose and mean little eyes. "What are you doing here?" Mara demanded. "Just taking a look around." "At midnight?" He grinned. "Miss Vaughn wanted me to deliver a message." "What message?" "This." He pulled something from his coat and threw it at her feet. It was a doll, or what was left of one. Someone had torn off its arms and legs and burned its face. "She says that's what happens to little girls who talk too much," the man said. "And to fat cooks who don't know their place." Mara's hand tightened on the knife. "Get out." "Or what? You'll stab me?" He laughed. "You couldn't hurt a fly, lady. Everyone knows that. You're soft, weak. That's why you're perfect." "Perfect for what?" "For breaking." He took a step forward. "See, Miss Vaughn figured something out. She can burn your buildings and poison your wells all day long, but it won't matter. Mercer won't break unless you do. So that's the new plan. We break you, and he'll fold like a cheap suit." "I'm not that easy to break." "Everyone's easy to break if you find the right pressure point." His eyes slid toward the main house. "That little girl, for instance. Be a real shame if something happened to her. Rage flared white-hot in Mara's chest. "Touch her and I'll kill you myself." "There it is." The man grinned wider. "There's that fight. Miss Vaughn said you'd have some. Said it'd be fun watching it drain away." He turned to leave, and Mara let him go because she had no legal right to stop him, and because calling for help would wake Sarah and terrify her. But she stood in the yard long after he disappeared, shaking with fury and fear, staring at the mutilated doll. She was still there when Rhett found her. "What happened?" Mara told him. "All of it." When she got to the part about Sarah, Rhett's face went hard as stone. "She's threatening a child now. She'll do anything to win." "Then we need to move Sarah somewhere safe." Rhett picked up the doll, his jaw working. "There's a family in Timber Creek. Good people. They'd keep her until this is over." "She won't go. She barely trusts me. She definitely won't trust strangers. She doesn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice." Mara looked at him. "Even kids." They told Sarah in the morning. As predicted, she refused. "I'm not leaving," Sarah said, her voice stronger than it had been. "I'm not leaving Mara." "Sweetheart, it's not safe here," Mara said gently. "It's not safe anywhere. That lady will find me. She found Mama and Papa. We'll protect you. You can't." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody can protect anybody from people like her, but at least here I'm with you. At least here I'm not alone." Mara pulled her close, feeling helpless. The girl was right. Celeste had resources and money and men who'd do anything for the right price. Sending Sarah away wouldn't keep her safe. It would just make her an easier target. "Okay," Mara said. "You can stay, but you have to promise me something." "What?" "If things get bad, really bad, you'll run. You'll hide like you did at your house, and you won't come out until it's safe. No matter what you hear, promise me." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." The next attack came 3 days later. Mara was making breakfast when she heard the cattle. Not their usual lowing, but panicked bellowing. She ran to the window and saw them stampeding across the valley, hundreds of them running wild. "What the hell?" Danny appeared beside her, staring. "Who spooked them?" They found out soon enough. Someone had cut the fence on the north pasture and fired shots to scatter the herd. It took the men all day to round them up, and when they did a count, they were missing 20 head. 20 cattle. That was thousands of dollars in losses. "She's escalating," Jim said that night. They were gathered in the barn, everyone exhausted and filthy. First it was petty sabotage. Now it's real damage. "She's testing us," Rhett said, "seeing how much we can take." "We can't take much more. Not with the supplies gone and the well still fouled." Porter rubbed his face. "Boss, I hate to say it, but maybe we should consider—" "No." "I'm just saying, I know what you're saying, and the answer is no. We don't negotiate with people like Celeste Vaughn." "Then what do we do?" Danny asked. "Sit here and wait for her to destroy us? We fight back." Rhett stood, and everyone went quiet. "Tomorrow morning, I'm riding to Helena. There's a federal marshal there I served with during the war. If I can get him to investigate the Vaughn's business dealings, we might be able to expose them, take away their power." "That'll take weeks," Jim said. "Maybe months." "I know, but it's the only shot we have." Rhett looked around at all of them. "I need you to hold things together while I'm gone. Keep everyone safe, especially Mara and Sarah." "We will," Danny said, and the others nodded. Rhett turned to Mara. "Can I talk to you? Alone?" They walked outside, away from the barn, toward the creek that still held water. The moon was bright enough to see by, turning everything silver and strange. "I need you to promise me something," Rhett said. "What?" "If things go wrong while I'm gone, if Celeste makes a move and the men can't stop her, you take Sarah and run. Don't try to be brave, don't try to fight, just run." "Where would I go?" "There's a line shack about 10 miles east, old hunting cabin, half fallen down, but it's shelter. You could hide there until I get back." "Rhett, promise me, Mara." He grabbed her hands, and she realized how scared he was. Not for himself, but for her. "I can't lose you. Not now. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're the bravest person I've ever met. I know you saved a dying man's hand, fed a starving kid, took in an orphan nobody else wanted. I know you make the best biscuits in Montana, and you have a smile that could light up the darkest room if you'd ever let anyone see it." Mara's throat went tight. You're talking nonsense. I'm talking truth. And the truth is somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you. So promise me you'll run if you have to, because I can rebuild a ranch. I can't rebuild you. Mara stared at him. Part of her wanted to laugh because the idea of someone like Rhett Mercer loving someone like her was absurd. But the other part, the part that had been alone for so long, it had forgotten what being wanted felt like. That part wanted to cry. I promise, she whispered. Rhett kissed her forehead, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. Then he walked back to the barn, and Mara stood there by the creek trying to remember how to breathe. Rhett left at dawn. Mara watched him ride away, a small pack on his back and his rifle across his saddle, and felt like he was taking all the safety in the world with him. The attack came that night. Mara was in her cabin with Sarah when they heard the first gunshot, then another, then shouting. Stay here, Mara told Sarah. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. But do it. Mara ran outside. The bunkhouse was on fire, flames climbing the walls. Men poured out, some of them carrying buckets, others carrying guns. In the chaos, Mara couldn't tell what was happening. Then she saw them. Celeste's hired guns, maybe 6 of them, riding through the ranch shooting at anything that moved. They weren't trying to kill anyone, not yet, just create chaos. Danny saw her and shouted, "Get back inside!" But before Mara could move, one of the riders wheeled toward her. She recognized him, the man from the other night, the one with the mean eyes. He rode straight at her, and Mara ran. Not toward her cabin where Sarah was hiding, but toward the kitchen. She couldn't lead him to Sarah. Wouldn't. She made it through the kitchen door and slammed it shut, but he was right behind her. The door crashed open and he walked in, grinning. "Knew you'd run," he said. "Everyone runs." Mara backed toward the counter, her hand searching for a weapon. Her fingers closed around the handle of her biggest knife. "Miss Vaughn's got a special message for you," the man said. "She says it's time to leave. Says if you're not off this ranch by tomorrow, she's going to kill that little girl. Slow. Make sure you watch. She won't touch Sarah, won't she? Who's going to stop her? These ranch hands? They're busy putting out fires. The boss? He's gone. It's just you and me and the truth." He took a step closer. "You're alone. You've always been alone. And you're going to die alone. Unless you do what Miss Vaughn says." "No," Mara said. "No?" I said no. Mara's hand tightened on the knife. "I'm done running. Done hiding. Done letting people like you and Celeste Vaughn decide what I'm worth. You want me off this ranch? You're going to have to drag me." The man laughed. Then he lunged. Mara swung the knife. She didn't think about it, didn't hesitate. The blade caught him across the arm, and he screamed, stumbling back. "You cut me! I'll do worse if you come near me again." He stared at her, blood dripping from his sleeve, and for the first time Mara saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of the knife. Fear of her. Of what she'd become. "You're crazy," he said. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of being scared." He ran. Actually turned and ran out the door like the devil was chasing him. Mara stood there shaking, the bloody knife still in her hand, not quite believing what she'd done. Jim found her there a few minutes later. The fire was out, the hired guns were gone, and the ranch was still standing. Barely. "You okay?" Jim asked, seeing the knife. "I cut him." "Good. He deserved it." Jim gently took the knife from her. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." But Mara didn't move. She was staring at her hands, her big, capable hands that had kneaded bread and sewn wounds and now held a knife against a man. Hands that had finally fought back. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I know. Celeste is going to come for me. For Sarah. For all of us." "Let her come." Jim's voice was steady. "We'll be ready." And looking at his face, scarred and weathered and absolutely certain, Mara believed him. The men on this ranch had become something more than workers. They'd become a family, rough and broken and held together by stubbornness and spite and the kind of loyalty you can't buy. They were going to fight. And maybe they'd lose. But they'd go down swinging. Celeste Vaughn was about to learn what happened when you pushed people who had nothing left to lose. Celeste came the next morning. Not with hired guns this time. Not with threats shouted across the yard. She came alone in a black carriage pulled by matching horses, dressed like she was going to a funeral. In a way, Mara supposed she was. The men had worked through the night repairing the bunkhouse, hauling water, standing guard. They were exhausted and filthy and angry, which made them dangerous. When Celeste's carriage rolled into the yard, every man reached for a weapon. But Celeste stepped down calm as Sunday morning, holding a leather case in one hand and a parasol in the other. She looked at the burned bunkhouse, the scattered tools, the men glaring at her with open hostility, and smiled like she was surveying her kingdom. "I'd like to speak with Miss Holloway," she called out. "Alone." "Not happening," Danny said, rifle in hand. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make a deal." Celeste's eyes found Mara standing by the kitchen. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Unless you're too frightened to face me." It was bait and everyone knew it, but Mara stepped forward anyway. "Don't," Jim said quietly. "I have to." Mara looked at the men who'd become her family. "If she wanted me dead, she could have done it already. She wants something else." "Then let her want it from a distance." 5 minutes, Mara said. "I can handle 5 minutes." She walked across the yard and Celeste met her halfway. Up close, the woman looked tired, Mara realized. Expensive tired, with powder covering the shadows under her eyes, but tired nonetheless. "Shall we sit?" Celeste gestured to a bench near the well. They sat. The men watched from 20 feet away, tense and ready. Sarah watched from the kitchen window, her small face pressed to the glass. "You're persistent," Celeste said. "I'll give you that." "So are you." "Yes, well, I don't like to lose." Celeste opened the leather case and pulled out a stack of papers. "I'm going to be direct because we're both busy women. I want you gone. You want safety. I'm prepared to offer both." "I'm listening." $10,000. Celeste set the papers on the bench between them. "Cash. Yours the moment you sign this agreement and leave Montana. You can go anywhere, California, Oregon, back east. Start a new life somewhere Rhett Mercer will never find you." Mara looked at the papers. $10,000. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. Enough to disappear completely. Enough to be anyone, anywhere. "And if I don't sign?" "Then I stop being polite." Celeste's voice went cold. "I have 6 men in Timber Creek right now. Another 4 in Helena. I can make a dozen problems appear for this ranch every single day until Rhett gives up or dies trying to save it. I can make sure no bank in the territory will lend him money. No store will sell him supplies. No workers will come here. I can strangle this place slowly until everyone here starves or leaves. Rhett will fight you. Rhett will lose. My father has judges in his pocket, politicians on his payroll, and enough money to burn this ranch to ash 20 times over. The only reason we haven't already is because I wanted to offer you a way out first." Celeste leaned closer. "I'm not a monster, Miss Holloway. I don't want innocent people hurt, but I will hurt them if that's what it takes. So take the money. Save yourself. Save them. Walk away while you still can." Mara looked at the papers again. A way out. A clean break. Everything she'd wanted when she first came to Iron Ridge. Enough money to disappear, to become someone new, to leave behind all the hurt and shame. "Why do you hate me so much?" Mara asked quietly. Celeste blinked. "I don't hate you." "Then why go to all this trouble?" "Because he loves you." The words came out bitter. "I spent 2 years as Rhett Mercer's fiancé. 2 years trying to make him see me, really see me. He was always polite, always kind, but he never looked at me the way he looks at you, like you're the only person in the world that matters. That's not my fault." "I know, but it doesn't change anything." Celeste closed the leather case with a sharp snap. "I could have been a good wife to him. I would have given him everything, money, connections, a name that means something. Instead, he ran off to this frozen wasteland to raise cattle and hide from civilization. And for what? So he could fall in love with a cook?" The contempt in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Mara felt it like a slap, the old familiar sting of being found lacking, of being too much, too big, too plain, too wrong for anyone to love honestly. "I'm not taking your money," Mara said. Celeste's face went blank with shock. "Excuse me?" "I said no." "You're refusing $10,000? I'm refusing to let you win." Mara stood, and Celeste had to look up at her. "You've spent your whole life buying and bullying people into doing what you want. It's worked because most people don't have anything worth fighting for. But I do now. I have a home. I have people who need me. And I have a man who sees me exactly as I am and loves me anyway. You can't buy that. Can't threaten it away. So take your money and leave. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Celeste stood slowly, smoothing her skirts. I tried to be kind. I tried to give you an out. Remember that when everything burns. I'll remember you threatened a 6-year-old orphan. I'll remember you murdered her parents, and I'll make sure everyone else remembers too. Something flickered across Celeste's face. You can't prove that. Sarah can. She saw you. She'll testify. A traumatized child's testimony? Please, my father's lawyers would tear her apart in minutes. Then I guess we'll find out. Mara crossed her arms. Because Rhett's gone to Helena to get a federal marshal. They'll investigate your father's business, dig through those books David Whitmore was going to expose, and when they find what he found, your family is finished. Celeste's composure cracked, just for a second, but Mara saw the fear underneath. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you. They stared at each other, and Mara realized something. Celeste was scared. Actually scared. Because for the first time in her life, she'd met someone who wouldn't bend. Celeste climbed back into her carriage without another word. But before she left, she leaned out the window, her face hard as marble. This isn't over. Yes, Mara said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. Don't. The carriage pulled away. Mara stood in the yard until the dust settled, then turned to find every man on the ranch staring at her. Did you just turn down $10,000? Danny asked, incredulous. Yes. Are you insane? Probably. Mara walked toward the kitchen, suddenly exhausted. But I'm not for sale. Behind her, the men broke into grins. Jim started laughing first, then Porter, then all of them, whooping and shouting like they'd just won a war. Maybe they had. Sarah met Mara at the kitchen door and threw her arms around her waist. You didn't leave. I told you I wouldn't. But she offered you money, lots of money. Money's not everything, sweetheart. Mara smoothed Sarah's hair. Sometimes the things you can't buy are the only things worth keeping. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. The men worked in pairs, weapons always close, waiting for the next attack. But it didn't come. On the 4th day, riders appeared on the eastern road. Mara's heart jumped until she recognized Rhett's horse in the lead. He rode in with 2 men beside him, one wearing a marshal's badge, the other dressed like a lawyer. Rhett dismounted and came straight to Mara. You're still here. Where else would I be? Celeste came, didn't she? Tried to pay you off? She tried. I said no. Rhett pulled her into a hug so sudden and tight it knocked the breath from her lungs. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. Thank you for staying. You're welcome. Mara pulled back, awkward under the stares of everyone watching. Who are your friends? This is Marshal Hayes and District Attorney Palmer. They're here to investigate the Vaughns. The marshal was older, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. Miss Holloway, I understand you have a witness who can place Celeste Vaughn at a murder scene. I do. Her name's Sarah. She's 6 years old and she's terrified, so go easy on her. I will, ma'am, but I need to hear her story. They gathered in Rhett's office, Mara, Sarah, Rhett, the marshal, and the attorney. Sarah sat in Mara's lap, small and trembling, while the marshal asked his questions gently. She told them everything. The fire, her parents, the woman with yellow hair and the scarred man. She told them about hiding in the root cellar while her house burned, about walking through the snow, about being so cold she thought she'd die. By the time she finished, the marshal's face was grim. That's enough, sweetheart. You did real good. Is the lady going to jail? Sarah asked. We're going to do everything we can to make sure of it. The attorney had been taking notes. The problem is proof. We have the child's testimony, which is compelling, but Vaughn's lawyers will attack her credibility. We need something else. Documents, witnesses, physical evidence. What about Curtis? Rhett asked. He was there. He helped with the murders. Where is he? Locked in my tack room. The marshal raised an eyebrow. You've been holding a murder suspect in your tack room for a week? I was waiting for you to show up. Hayes almost smiled. Well, let's go talk to him. Curtis didn't want to talk, not at first. He sat in the tack room dirty and defiant, insisting he didn't know anything about any murders. But when the marshal told him they had a witness, when he explained that Curtis was facing a hanging either way, the man's resolve crumbled. "She paid me," Curtis said finally. $500 to burn the storehouse, poison the well, cause trouble. Said she wanted Mercer to give up the ranch. I didn't know about the murders until after. Swear to heaven I didn't. But you knew about them eventually, the marshal said, and you didn't report it. What was I supposed to do? She's got money and power and you're a coward. Jim stood in the doorway, his face carved from disgust. You let a woman and child die for $500. Curtis looked away. I needed the money. Everyone needs money. Not everyone becomes a murderer for it. The marshal arrested Curtis on the spot. Then he and the attorney rode to Timber Creek to arrest Celeste. Rhett, Mara, and half the ranch hands went with them. They found Celeste at the hotel, calmly eating breakfast in the dining room. She looked up when they entered, saw the marshal's badge, and set down her fork with perfect composure. May I help you, Marshal? Celeste Vaughn, you're under arrest for the murders of David and Eleanor Whitmore, and for conspiracy to commit arson and sabotage. The dining room went silent. Every head turned. Celeste stood slowly, her face pale, but calm. This is absurd. I've never heard of those people. We have a witness who saw you at the scene. We have your accomplice in custody, ready to testify, and we're obtaining a warrant to search your father's business records for evidence of fraud. Hayes took out his handcuffs. You can come quietly or make a scene. Your choice. For a moment, Mara thought Celeste would fight, would scream and rage and use every weapon in her arsenal. But instead, she looked across the room at Mara with something almost like respect. You were supposed to take the money, Celeste said quietly. I know. You could have been free. I am free. For the first time in my life. Celeste smiled, sad and bitter. Then I suppose you won. They let her out in handcuffs. Every person in that dining room watched her go, and Mara felt something shift in the air. Celeste Vaughn, the woman everyone feared, reduced to just another criminal. Powerless. Finished. Outside, the spring sun was bright and warm. Mara stood on the hotel steps watching them load Celeste into the marshal's wagon and felt lighter than she had in months. Rhett appeared beside her. It's really over. Is it? Hayes says with Curtis's testimony and Sarah's witness statement, they have enough to convict. Celeste will hang. Her father will be investigated for fraud. The whole family is finished. Good. Mara meant it. They rode back to Iron Ridge in silence. When they arrived, the men were waiting in the yard. Someone had cleaned up the burned timber, repaired the fence, and started rebuilding the storehouse. The ranch looked tired but alive, like it had survived something terrible and was ready to keep going. That night, Mara made a feast. Real food, the kind she hadn't been able to make in weeks. Roasted chicken and potatoes, and fresh bread and pie made with the last of the dried apples. The men ate like starving dogs, laughing and joking and telling stories about the fight. Remember when Mara stabbed that guy? Danny said, grinning. I didn't stab him, I cut him. Same thing. It's really not. Either way, you should have seen his face. Man looked like he'd seen a ghost. He looked like he'd seen a woman who finally stopped being afraid, Jim said quietly. That's scarier than any ghost. The men raised their glasses to that. To Mara, who'd fed them when they were mean. Who'd stayed when they pushed her away, who'd fought back when it mattered most. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Mara stood in the kitchen cleaning up. She was scrubbing the last pot when Rhett came in. Need help? I'm almost done. He picked up a towel and dried the dishes anyway. They worked in comfortable silence until everything was clean and put away. Then Rhett took Mara's hand. I have something to ask you. What? Marry me. Mara's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Not because I need a cook or because you're convenient. Marry me because I love you, because you make me want to be better than I am, because when I think about the rest of my life, I can't imagine it without you in it. Rhett, I know I'm not much of a catch. I've got a half-burned ranch and a lot of debt and enemies who'd love to see me fail. But I'm offering you everything I have, everything I am, if you'll take it. Mara stared at him. This man who'd hired her when no one else would, who'd protected her when the world turned hostile. who'd looked at her, really looked, and seen someone worth loving. "I'm not beautiful," she said. "Yes, you are. I'm not elegant or refined or any of the things." "Mara." Rhett cupped her face in his hands. "I don't want elegant or refined. I want you, exactly as you are, strong and stubborn and brave enough to stand up to people who've been knocking you down your whole life. That's what beautiful looks like to me." Mara's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, yes, yes, I'll marry you." Rhett kissed her. Not gentle this time, but hard and desperate and full of all the fear he'd been carrying that she'd say no. Mara kissed him back, tasting salt and hope, and the beginning of something she'd stopped believing existed. When they broke apart, Sarah was standing in the doorway in her nightgown. "Are you getting married?" she asked. "Yes," Mara said. "Can I stay with you?" Mara knelt down to Sarah's level. "Do you want to stay with us?" "More than anything." "Then you're staying. We're a family now, all three of us." Sarah threw her arms around Mara's neck and held on like she'd never let go. And maybe she wouldn't. Maybe that was what family meant, holding on even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. They got married 3 weeks later in the kitchen, where Mara had spent so many hours cooking and crying and learning to fight. The men decorated it with wildflowers and pine branches. Jim carved new wooden spoons as a wedding gift. Danny gave them a set of matching plates. Porter stood up and gave a speech about how Mara had saved them all from starving. But more than that, she'd reminded them what it meant to care about something beyond just surviving. Sarah stood beside Mara in a new dress someone had sewn from flour sacks. She held the wedding rings, plain iron bands that Rhett had forged himself in the ranch's workshop. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but real and solid and made to last. The ceremony was short. They didn't have a preacher, so Jim did the honors, reading from a book of common law he'd carried since his war days. When he got to the vows, Rhett spoke first. "I promise to protect you and provide for you, to listen when you talk and stand beside you when the world doesn't, to love you when it's easy and especially when it's hard, for as long as we both live." Then Mara, her voice shook but held, "I promise to feed you and care for you, to stand my ground when you need me to and bend when that's better, to love you without shame and fight for you without hesitation, for as long as we both live." They exchanged rings. Jim pronounced them married, and every man in that kitchen clapped and whistled and shouted congratulations like it was the best thing they'd ever seen. Because maybe it was. Maybe watching two broken people piece themselves together into something whole was the best thing any of them had witnessed. A reminder that endings could also be beginnings if you were brave enough to try. The years that followed weren't easy. The ranch took time to rebuild, and money was tight for a long while. Celeste was hanged in Helena that fall after a trial that exposed her father's crimes. The Vaughn Empire collapsed, and the family name became synonymous with greed and murder. Curtis hanged beside her, still insisting he'd only been following orders. Sarah stayed with Mara and Rhett. She grew up strong and fierce, with a laugh that could fill a room and a temper that could clear one. She learned to cook from Mara and to ride from Rhett, and she never forgot the two people who'd saved her when she had nothing. The ranch hands stayed too, most of them. A few drifted away over the years, but Jim and Danny and Porter became permanent fixtures. They grew old on that land, their faces weathered and their backs bent, but their loyalty never wavered. Mara kept cooking. She fed the men and the neighbors, and eventually the children that came. 3 of them, spaced out over 8 years. A boy who had Rhett's eyes. Twin girls who had Mara's stubbornness. And Sarah, always Sarah, the oldest and fiercest. The one who'd teach her younger siblings that family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up when things got hard. People in Timber Creek still talked about Mara sometimes. About the fat cook who'd brought down the Vaughn family. About the woman who turned down $10,000 because she refused to be bought. About how she'd taken a burned-out ranch and turned it into something that mattered. But Mara didn't think much about what people said anymore. She'd learned that the opinions of strangers only had the power you gave them, and she was done giving her power away. Instead, she thought about the small things. The way Rhett still kissed her every morning before heading out to work. The way Sarah braided her little sister's hair with patient hands. The way the men still came to her with their problems, trusting her to help solve them. She thought about Jim, who'd carved her that first spoon and taught her that small kindnesses could save a person. About Porter, who'd delivered her to Iron Ridge and stayed to become her friend. About Danny, who'd called her brave before she believed it herself. She thought about all the people who'd rejected her over the years, and how their rejection had pushed her toward the one place she was meant to be. Sometimes late at night, when everyone else was asleep, Mara would stand by her kitchen window and look out over the ranch. The same view she'd had that first morning when she was terrified and alone, convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. But she hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a choice. To stay when leaving would have been easier. To fight when surrender would have been smarter. To love when being loved back seemed impossible. And that choice had made all the difference. One spring evening, 20 years after she'd first arrived at Iron Ridge, Mara stood in that same kitchen making bread. Her hands were older now, marked with scars and age spots, but they still knew the work. Push down, fold over, push down, fold over. Sarah came in with her own daughter balanced on her hip, a chubby baby with dark curls and curious eyes. Need help? Always, Mara smiled. Pull up a chair. They worked side by side, kneading dough while the baby watched. Outside, Mara could hear Rhett teaching the twins how to rope a fence post, could hear the men laughing about something in the barn, could hear life happening all around her, messy and loud and imperfect. Mama, Sarah said quietly, do you ever regret it? Staying here instead of taking that money and starting over somewhere else? Mara thought about it. Really thought about it. $10,000. A new life. A chance to be someone different. No, she said finally, because this is where I learned something important. What's that? That you don't find yourself by running away. You find yourself by standing still long enough to see who's standing with you. Sarah smiled and went back to her dough. The baby reached for Mara with flour-dusted hands, and Mara took her, feeling the weight of her. The solid realness of a life being lived on purpose. She'd been the woman no one wanted, the joke everyone made, the person easiest to ignore. But she'd refused to stay that person. Had decided, inch by stubborn inch, that she was worth more than other people's cruelty, that her body didn't define her value, that being seen as less didn't make her less. She'd learned that love wasn't something you earned by being perfect. It was something you built by being honest, by showing up even when you were scared, by cooking breakfast at dawn and sewing wounds at midnight and standing your ground when the world tried to push you over. She'd learned that home wasn't a place. It was the people who refused to let you disappear. And on a ranch in Montana where winter was brutal and kindness was rare and survival took everything you had, Mara Holloway had finally, impossibly, found hers. The bread rose in its pans, golden and perfect. Outside, the sun set over mountains that would still be there long after everyone she loved was gone. But for now, for this moment, they were all here together. Mara smiled and started on another batch. There was always more bread to make, more people to feed, more stubborn hope to spread around. And this time, she wasn't doing it alone.